Remember, you can keep the conversation going on and communicate with us across all the social media platforms. That's at TV47KE with the hashtag The Days Counter. But for now, let's have a quick look at what's making headlines on the papers today. Biggest headline today is basically talk about President Moi, who was the retired state president, and he was born in 1924 till 2020. As you can see, that's what's making headlines on the Business Daily. Moving on to the next paper is the Daily Nation, and you can see the top headline there is Farmers Relief as avocado export ban set to be lifted a month early. We also have other cases of CBK tips to cut base lending rate again. And we also have, you have 22 days to buy a house in Ngara. I believe that's under the affordable housing plan. And as we wrap the paper review, we'd love to have a look at the Star, where we have Vodacom to launch 5G services in South Africa this year. Another news that's making headlines is the business community in Kenya mourns the late Moi. That's a very big story. He was, of course, the retired state leader of Kenya. And in that picture as well, you can see the CBK Governor Patrick Njoroge alongside the CEO of the Kenya Bankers Association, probably discussing one or two with regards to the demise of the former head of state. Now, moving on, as we move on, we'd like to have a look at the top stories for today. A court has ruled that an elderly plumber who was formerly employed by a firm believed to be owned by President Uhuru Kenyatta will be paid 2 million shillings after the unlawful termination of his contract and use of his picture without his consent. David Gasheru was laid off back in 2018 after complaining when Brookside Dairies used his picture in its calendar. Gisheru, through lawyer Donald Kipkorir, sued Gishesha Farms alongside Brookside Dairies. However, the two companies denied the claims and urged the court to dismiss the case, claiming there were no constitutional issues to be addressed. Moving on to matters, the falling prices of properties have forced Harambee Sacco to stop the sale of some of its land and developed properties amounting to about 1.7 billion shillings. Chief Executive Officer George Onchiri said the scheduled sale for the year 2020 had been halted until when the property market would regain its robustness. Onchiri said they have instead shifted their focus to developing their 12-acre Kisumu plot, 10 acres in Siaya and their 5-acre in Nanyuki into residential units under the affordable housing scheme. As we wrap up the top stories for today, the effects of the deadly coronavirus outbreak have finally hit home as importers have started to report of delayed orders from their suppliers in China. A number of e-commerce firms have already sent out warnings to shoppers, noting that their orders would be delayed after many Chinese factories suspended their operations. The pandemic has already created a negative impact on international trade and businesses as delays in resuming work continues. Now let's move on to What's New, which is a fresh segment on the Days Counter. On this fresh segment, we'd like to have a look at some of the newest devices coming into operation in the year 2020. Let's have a look at these videos. Well, what you just saw is an interesting device known as the Airbar. Now, what the Airbar does is that it allows any digital kind of screen, for example, what I have in front of me, anything close to 3 to 5 inches. Now you place that airbar on the beneath place of that screen, and it literally turns that device into a touch screen. Yeah, I'm right. So that's what the airbar does. You can literally turn anything that's not a touch screen to a touch screen by placing that, and basically allow you to operate the device at a more easier way. Now on to the next device. Let's have a look at that video. An interesting device, and the device itself has actually gotten its name from an owl, which is a bird. If you can see very well, if you saw previously on that video, is that it looks like an owl. Now, what the wheeling owl does is that it allows people in a conference setup or in a meeting, so to say, to have a more one-on-one interaction, because in the device it's installed with 8 cameras, and it has a 360 degrees kind of cameras that rotate. So anybody who's having a conference call can literally have a one-on-one interaction vis-a-vis the previous experiences where you can literally just have a look at the whole table without necessarily interacting with one person at a single time. Now, those are very interesting devices. And for the wheeling owl, it goes for about $795 on Amazon. That's about 80,000 Kenyan shillings. And for the airbar, that should cost you around 5,000 Kenyan shillings, if I'm not wrong. Thank you very much for that segment. Now, moving on, let's have a look at the business voices making headlines in today's business world.
And we've also put the investments in Nigeria as well. One of the things that we do as Microsoft is, knowing that we're a major cloud provider, we basically need to make sure that our resources are highly skilled. That is really what drives innovation at the end of the day. That is what we need to do as we engage all sorts of customers. You know, today we're talking about the banking sector that have all sorts of challenges. We think about skills as a critical part of that engagement. So these are just 3, and you are probably experiencing this in your industry today. You know, how do you move to the next level? What do you think around the changing workforce within your environment? We're always hearing about restructuring, you know, restructuring within your organization. There's no job that is secure today. The focus is really around the skills development that is required for you to move to the next level in your organization. And if we think about some of the disruptive solutions in the banking sector, digital is disrupting the way banks deal with their customers. It's a big concern in terms of how do you make sure that you're really focused on competition? How do you compete with the next person? I just told the story of Tencent and Alipay in China. The question is, in Kenya, there are all of those types of challenges that you face within the financial services space. There are new software companies and new fintech companies that are rising every day. And you can see
the Business Voices segment now brings us straight into the business news, where, on a lighter note, if you have been considering wines and spirits business, there's quite some traction in this space. Now, the East African Breweries Limited announced a pre-tax profit of 10.6 billion with net sales of up to 10%. Despite increases in the alcoholic beverage taxes. The company has even embarked on projects across East Africa to leverage renewable energy in biomass and solar, as well as water recovery and treatment. These sustainability plans are geared towards reducing carbon emissions by 42,000 tons, save over 1 billion cubic liters of water annually, and produce up to 10% Ear-Bill power needs. Here's more.
I think on the value chains, let me start with sorghum. So sorghum, we are supporting farmers right from research getting the right varieties that will stand the shocks of climate change. And therefore, from an investment perspective, as EABL, we are really investing with farmers. We are growing more than we need. So if you look at our farmers, they grow more than we consume, because sorghum is also used as a food crop for people. So I would say, even if competition is coming, there is enough barley, there is enough sorghum out there for all of us. And I don't think our farmers have reached the ultimate or optimum sort of productivity of all these brands.
All three business units are performing exceptionally well: Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania. And then whether it's beer or spirits, which we break down into 8 segments, all 8 segments are in growth. So we're delighted with the holistic nature of the performance. And Kenya at +8 is particularly satisfying given the excise increases hurt our beer business this year. Tanzania at +19 is really encouraging, given this is now the 3rd year of very significant growth for that business. And the Tanzania growth is not just characterised by Serengeti anymore. Guinness in over 40% growth, Pilsner in 14% growth, and the mainstream spirits business is starting to move very fast as well. And then Uganda have weathered a sachet ban, and yet have still grown by 10%. They've done some brilliant work on the portfolio, so flanked Bell with Pilsner at a different price point, so 2,500 shillings versus 3,000 shillings, a different liquid, and therefore that business has been largely incremental to the overall beer performance in Uganda. I guess the one area that I'm disappointed in is our bottled beer performance in Kenya. There's pockets of brilliance, and so Tusker Light has done really well, particularly engaging the younger adult consumer. Whitecap is on fire, doing very well in high double-digit growth. But overall, the Kenyan bottled beer business is at -1 at the half. And that's 100% to do with the price increase that we passed on to consumers as a result of the excise increase this year.
Thank you for staying with us on that fast beat of the segment. But at this point, we'd like to take a short break. Don't go away. We'll be back with more news. World of M-Truck Solutions, your trusted provider for bulk SMSs. We also offer API integrations for all your communication and payment needs. We also provide you with tailor-made payment getaway solution to receive and disperse cash quickly, affordable and securely. Let us expand your reach and connectivity on USSD, SMS and voice today. Call us on 0723 030 030 or email hello@mtruck.limited.co.ke. For more details, visit our website www.mtrucklimited.co.ke.
Tarehe 23 Disemba mwaka 2019, msimu wa kwanza ukafika kilele.
Kikosi cha mboni ya TV47 kikazama. Lakini hakikuchoka.
Kikakesha, kikarauka kwa minajili ya kukuletea msemo wa pili. Wakati huu vijana na masuala yanayowahusu yakiangaziwa kwa kina. Vijana wamepata makazi, vijana wamepata mboni. Jina langu ni Samuel J. Wainaina.
Thank you very much for staying with us right here on the Day's Counter on your favorite station, TV47. Now, if in any case you're joining us right now, the medium or the platform to communicate with us is all on our social media platforms. That's at TV47KE with the hashtag The Day's Counter, or you might as well send me a direct tweet at Komowino. And as usual, don't forget the hashtag Day's Counter. Moving on. Popular across 60 countries globally, Dinner in the Sky in Johannesburg is Africa's only floating dinner table suspended at a height of 50 meters from the ground by crane. The novelty dinner concept offers a set gourmet menu for guests looking for an adventurous dining experience with breathtaking views. Take a look.
Popular in more than 60 countries around the world, including Australia, Japan, India, Dubai and China, to name a few, South Africa's version of Dinner in the Sky has introduced a new gastronomic treat, 50 meters high in the sky. The novelty restaurant, Higher Ground, offers customers an opportunity to experience panoramic views of Johannesburg's skyline with a sunset backdrop while enjoying a gourmet three-course dinner accompanied by fine wine and soft music. The table is suspended at a height more than 50 meters from the ground by a crane and executed by a team of professionals for 90 minutes. Guests are lifted high in the air on an open platform which is suspended from a construction crane and held up by cables. The table seats 22 people and 3 staff, including a waiter and entertainer. The sky dining concept was first introduced in 2006 by entrepreneurs David Reisels and Steven Kerkhoffs and has gone on to become a global dining phenomenon over the years.
It's the crazy thing about dining at 55 meters up, you in the clouds and having drinks up in the clouds and having fun. So I've just been pushing along, and the first business model failed. I own the restaurant and Dinner in the Sky, and the two work together. You know, I've got the back end and the front end. So yeah, it's become very popular. We do between 150 and 176 people per day that we operate.
Burger started the franchise almost 5 years ago after it failed to gain success from its previous owners. Since its rise in popularity, adventure seekers from all over the world have made it a top go-to spot for private functions, dinners and meetings.
It's almost just being on top of the world, really, for me. I'm just loving seeing Joburg in these lenses that I've never thought that we had such a beautiful city here, you know, so many trees around, loving it.
Though leaving the table is not an option, diners can enjoy the beautiful scenery. A seat at the Sky dining table varies according to the menu. However, a standard dinner costs less than $70.
Well, the experience is quite different. You're having a dinner, looking at the whole of Johannesburg and seeing the city around you, seeing the trees around you, watching the sunset, and be able to see, having the eye-bit view, being on top of everything.
Burger hopes to expand his franchise into neighboring countries such as Botswana.
If you look at our price structure compared to the rest of the world, if you went to the Big Wheel in London, the same meal that you've experienced today, the three-course meal, cost you nearly 4,000 Rand. Where here you at 975 Rand for 1.5 hours experience, and there you got an hour's experience. So
he added that the pricing is aimed at accommodating customers across different price points to avoid making the experience inaccessible, especially to locals who cannot afford to pay top dollar.
Well, I definitely don't know about you guys, but that one for me, that's a no-no. First thing is I'm scared of heights, so I don't think I'd enjoy dinner in that place. Let's move on. During her career, Vonn expressed the desire to take on the men and test her skills against the very best. She never got the opportunity, but does she think a battle of the sexes could still take place in the future? Take a look.
So we're here in Kitzbühel. That is the Strife over there. That's the Hausbergkante, the most epic, iconic jump ever, right there. Just right yonder. Right, Luce? Lucy's excited, clearly.
Ski star Lindsey Vonn is at the famous downhill race in Kitzbühel for the first time ever. Retired alpine skiing legend Lindsey Vonn is attending the world-famous Hahnenkamm-Rennen in Kitzbühel for the first time. She revealed since hanging up her racing suit and helmet, she has had to try and find a new relationship with the sport and that she is jealous of the men racing this weekend. The 35-year-old Vonn never got the chance to race down the Strife during her glittering career, in which she won 4 overall World Cup titles, 84 World Cup races, and a litany of Olympic and world medals.
You know, I feel like skiing is kind of like a bad breakup. I kind of need some distance and some space, and I'm kind of slowly getting back into watching it, but it's been hard, you know, because every time I watch it, it reminds me of what I'm missing. I find it easier to watch men's races, obviously, than women's, but, you know, of course, I'm always cheering for my teammates and, you know, watching girls come back from injury, you know, that have had a hard time. I always want to support them, but you know, for me, I just kind of need some space still. But hopefully, you know, as time goes on, I'll be able to be more involved and it'll be less painful for me and, you know, kind of start to have build a new relationship with ski racing. You know, before I was injured, I really wish that I would have at least gotten a chance to ski down it, you know, not, I wouldn't even mind if I didn't race. I think it would have been really cool for me to one time go down it, you know, with a race suit on and just see what it's like. And being here as a spectator, I'm so jealous of the men, you know. This is such an amazing track. It's such an amazing experience. The fans, the atmosphere, the scenery. It's one of the most amazing
Having seen the slope firsthand, she said she really wished she would have at least got a chance to ski down it. On Saturday morning before the race, she will finally be at the start gate, not to race, but Vonn will ski the course with Norwegian legend Aksel Lund Svindal.
Do what I love anymore. You know, it's, like I said, it's kind of like a bad breakup where I just miss it. You know, I miss it and I wish I could still do it, but physically I wasn't able to, and it's just kind of a hard reality to accept. And no matter how many business deals I make or how many companies I start, it's never going to replace the adrenaline and the speed and the thrill of ski racing.
Now, as we wrap up the business news, the access to information across all business sectors is a critical tool in the development of any sort of product or service within an organization. The second annual BFSI Innovation Summit is currently being held at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, and we got a chance to listen in on a panel discussion of chief information officers from different corporates across Africa and the world. Have a listen.
You will find that customer needs are changing. The processes that gave us top dollars years before may not be able to give us the same dollar if they stay the same. So we need to rethink how we can harness the potential of that technology to deliver business value, to ensure that we offer our customer the best experience, and also to maximize in terms of efficiency in our operations.
Thank you, Peter. And on that note, one thing that's clear from the four of you is that there's a change management aspect that's coming into play. There's an aspect in terms of the changing role of the CIO too. And if you saw from the earlier presentations on the regulation, recently in Kenya we had the Data Protection Act that actually stipulates the conditions under which you can put data outside of Kenya. So what do you see as some of those paramount or key areas of change management, or even the changing role of the CIO as an enabler for this? Maybe let's start this time again with you, Peter.
Thank you. Just to mention a few, is that the architecture that we have in most of our organization is still that old architecture, the legacy. And one of the challenges that probably CEOs are facing right now is how to transform from that legacy architecture and move towards the digital transformation. It is cost intensive, so making convincing the management, especially if what is there is working, although in a limited way, to change, becomes a little bit a challenge. But we have seen a lot of progress. There is a lot of adoption towards new architectures, new digital architecture and institutions. Despite the fact that it is capital intensive, there is that support. Number two is that there is a lot of challenge in terms of security. New changes comes with new threats, and also the threat patterns are changing. So there is a lot of concern for the CIOs to ensure that as things change, they are keeping pace with the changing markets, especially in terms of threat landscape, and develop various use cases. And finally is adoption of newer technologies, which is also how do we strategize to maximize the benefits of the newer technologies. It's also convincing the rest to ensure that we are able to get into that adoption so that we can harness that benefits becomes also a challenge to some extent. But again, as I said, there is a lot of acceptance that is happening. If you compare a few years ago, where there was a lot of resistance, things have changed because even the marketplace, the customers who are driving change, they want to adopt, they are going with the new things. So there's a lot of adoption being driven by our customers. So whether we resist as a bank, whether we resist as organizations, the customers are out there to make sure that it happens. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So, well, for Barclays being a global organization, I think from the infrastructure perspective, we're pretty much prepared in terms of privacy. I think with the new law, what's coming to focus is the governance around the data, and that's what we're working on. And so what changes for the CIO is not much in terms of enabling data privacy. For the organization as a whole, it's the governance around that, because that is a second or third line of defense, as we call it. So that's not within the tech space. But having said that, there are some new guidelines from the regulator that will impact the technology roles under the CIO. So those have to be taken into consideration. In addition, as people are looking at cloud technologies, especially for banks, the regulator is very concerned about protecting that data on the cloud. Obviously, he needs to know that he has jurisdiction over it under the new guidelines. So, and our regulator is very smart. He just wants to make sure that you understand what it means, right?
Thank you. I agree with what has been said, and I was reflecting on this and thinking, one of the things that is very familiar, especially among CIOs, is classifying the things we need to deal with as people, process, and technology. If you asked me, and just what I was looking at, I saw something of Gartner. The new one is people, business, and technology. Now, this means the CIOs need to step up and start co-creating with the organization. So it's not going to be about your technical skill, but it's going to be a lot about your leadership, about your understanding the business to be able to co-create. So there is an expectation that the CIOs need to support the CEOs and the managing directors in driving digital across the organization, driving a culture of understanding what we can leverage from digital, and also understanding the business and being able to help with transforming the business models to be able to deliver and leverage the technology that we have. And I think the CIOs are in a very good place to do this better than any other executive member, because they have an understanding of technology which the rest do not have, and the skills and knowledge around leadership and business they can build because already they have been involved in doing some of this. So to me, that is the most important change that is happening for the CIOs. Thank you.
Very interesting insights there, and I agree with all of you. I was reading an article from the Allianz. It's a group that does insurance globally, and they have listed the top 10 risks in 2020, and they said that cyber attacks is the top threat right now. It's a higher threat than climate change or epidemics that are happening in China. So cyber attacks are clear and present danger. So what do we need to do? I was also reading another article from the World Economic Forum. They have not rated cyber attacks as number 1 in 2020, but they've rated cyber attacks as number 2. The first one is business upheaval and uncertainty. So the WEF says that the best way for us to combat this problem is for us to work in collaboration. If you hide what is affecting you at Barclays, you hide what is affecting you at Cobank, you hide what is affecting you at Stanbic, then we'll be hit by the cyber attackers. If we open up and share the way they share when a hurricane is coming, you'll be prepared. So sharing is very important, so that we can learn from each other. Number 2 is also the human element of these cyber attacks, that we must train our users to know how to respond to an attack. Ransomware attacks can completely decimate and bring down a whole organization in 1 minute. So how do we respond to those kind of attacks? But I liked the presentation by Kunle earlier that showed that trust is a new currency in the 21st century. So we must nurture this trust. Otherwise, our customers will not come to us. We must nurture privacy. The customers will not come to us if we have done nurture that privacy. So privacy and security are the currency.
Thank you for that. So what I'm hearing is an aspect of collaboration. There's an aspect of the changing market demands, as Peter highlighted, and there's an element of governance and understanding as a stakeholder the kind of data that you're holding and being able to be responsible for it. Now, let's move over to the people aspect. I think it's a topic that has been raised from the other speakers also. So, as a CIO today, I'm sure one of the biggest aspects is skills, both on a technical and a leadership aspect. So how are you currently dealing with this within your organizations? And where do you see potential areas for focus or potential areas for investment for partners and vendors in this room to be able to do in terms of supporting you on skills enablement? I'll start with you, Peter.
Thank you so much. I think the element of people is very critical, especially now. Having the right people in your organization, and specifically where they are dealing with the technology, is important. And as things change, the need to empower those people becomes very continuous. It has to be a strategic issue as you plan. How do you get
my staff or the staff that you have empowered. Empowerment can be through training or any other means, like workshops, forums, and all those things. So they are exposed and they are ready. Expose the new technology and they are ready to support even when the technology comes in. And even makes it easy to adopt those technologies as we move forward. It gives them confidence. However, there is always a challenge to what extent, because there is a cost involved, and at the same time, there is a need to get the right training so that they are empowered. So the balance between the cost and getting the right training or getting the right empowerment, that's a critical issue. We have seen a lot of movement, especially for the staff. I think with the technology, people have become so marketable. So there's a lot of movement from one organization to another.
Oh, we're sorry to experience and cut you short on that panel discussion, but I think it's just an issue with our technical team. We'll rectify that in due course. Now, before we end the segment, we'd love to talk to you about the Did You Know segment, which is giving you just some small facts on business issues that you might not have been aware of. Let's take a look. Yeah, Naskia. Ladies and gentlemen, that was all we had for you on today's segment on the Day's Counter. It has been a lovely afternoon with you, and I hope you got much from our business show. Coming right up next is Sheena Lopeo. Don't go away. Just keep it right here on TV47. But as usual, you can keep the conversation going on all our social media platforms at TV47KE. Until next time, I've been your host for today, Alan Owino. Do have yourself a lovely evening.